The Reformed Gamers is brought to you 100% independent and ad-free thanks to our dear patrons over on patreon.com/thereformedgamers to get yourself sweet, sweet perks such as uncut early access to the episodes, special episodes of the podcast, and more. Head on over to patreon.com/theformedgamers and consider lending support and joining the herd. Without further ado, let's hop into the show.
Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 183 of The Reformed Gamers, the show all about theology, video games, and landing on a deserted... Words, I lost it, guys.
Barren planet.
Barren planet, Skinner. You can edit that and make me sound a little more professional. I'm your host. And joining me tonight is the laugh track guy from Babylon Bees podcast, and also joining me. You know what? I kind of like the laugh track. Like, I wasn't sure about it when you mentioned it in the pre-show, but now I'm like, this adds a little bit of brevity to this
telling
show.
you, it'll get your ratings up quick.
There we go. Maybe that's what we'll do. Tune in next time, dear listeners. We bring on just a laugh hype man. But joining me for this episode is Jeff Simmons from Revelation Games to talk about their new game, Eden Remains Arrival. Jeff is no stranger to the show, but Jeff, say hello to the dear listeners.
Howdy, dear listeners. How you do?
Jeff, man, for those who don't know you, just take a few minutes to talk about who you are, your studio, and, don't talk about the game just yet because we're going to get into that for a topic. But take it away, man.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Simmons. I'm a Christian, and I work and own a little small indie startup, Christian game developer studio, game development studio, sorry. And we're trying to figure out ways how to make games to the glory of God and to the blessing of the saints, and to influence culture. And that's what I have been convicted of since I was an early Christian. And here I am, trying to figure out how to work it out.
There you go, man. That's awesome. Excited we could get you on to talk about this new game. Dear listeners, you guys probably already saw my reaction to the trailer that they released. If you haven't checked that out, the link to it will be in your show notes under our YouTube tab, and you guys can go check that out over there. But speaking of that, that's kind of new content. I'll get into some housekeeping here before we get into the show. A little bit of housekeeping as well, as Adam, you guys will notice, is not on this episode. He had some ministry engagements come up, so he will be sitting this one out, but he did manage to get some questions in for the topic, so he is here in spirit, so to speak. But as far as new content goes, just a reminder that the Retrospective series is back up on our website. Wesley is cranking those out. He kicked things off with Game Dev Story, which is ironic because we're talking to a game dev tonight, and you guys can go check that out, especially if you played Game Dev Story on your phone or on your Switch, or I think it's even on PC. You guys can go revisit that game over there. You can also check out this guest post that we had from a community member, Jono. He wrote Managing Time in Gaming. So it's something to kind of be a resource for you out there if you're struggling to find the balance between time and gaming, and if a game is worth continuing to play or not, and things like that. It's a really good article. He actually shared it in the Discord, and I was like, bro, this needs to go on our website to be a resource for other Christians and other gamers. And he was like, all right, I'm up for that. So link to that will be in your show notes. And speaking of our Discord, join our Discord. We will be starting our TRG book club very soon over there. We're going to be starting reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and examining that in February. So be sure to join the Discord. Link is in your show notes. You can also follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheTheoLogan. I stream every Friday morning from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we just kind of hang out, spend a lot of time in just chatting. And then I also play Destiny with members of the community as well. And if you like what we do here at TRG, you can support us over on Patreon, get these episodes early and uncut so you can hear all the kinds of goofs that Skinner hasn't edited out yet, because we upload the episodes earlier. I don't touch them, and you can enjoy those, or you can also get behind the scenes look of the podcast and things of that nature. But if you can't support us financially, totally understand. You can leave a rating and review of the show on your podcast app of your choice. Link to Podchaser will be in your show notes, so you can leave a review there if you don't want to sign into your iTunes or you don't know how to leave a review on your podcast app. We'll just kind of walk you through it over there. As always, too, if you're listening to the show, take a picture of your podcast app, screenshot it, tag us on social media. We'd love to share that around and just kind of like, look, people do listen to the show instead of just Logan's grandma. So enjoy that. There, let's see those going. But let's go ahead and get into the show. We always start the show like we always do with a little bit of what have we been playing. And Jeff, since you were the guest of honor, what have you been playing, man?
Well, in this case, I think you know, but it is Elite Dangerous. I have been all over some Elite Dangerous lately. And before that, I was playing some Star Wars Squadrons. I had a lot of fun with that game, and I played it. I didn't play it as long as I thought. Played it for, I don't know, maybe just under 20 hours or something like that. And then I just was like, I want more. And then I went right to Elite Dangerous. And then woke up, passed out in front of my computer at 6 something in the morning. Okay, I'm kidding. But no, I've been playing a lot of Elite Dangerous. It's awesome.
You actually got me to play it. I played it I need to play it more, but we
need to get you in there. We got to get you in there. You haven't seen nothing yet.
Yeah. And I didn't even know this until I looked in our Discord, but like there's a whole community or portion of our community that's playing it pretty actively and talking about the updates and sharing tips and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm not going to be playing this in a vacuum. Then there's I can refer to more people than just Jeff here and ask questions and group up. And so it's pretty cool. I didn't know that was in our community, but it's a cool game. I'll agree with you. I can see why people would spend a lot of time playing it, especially into the wee hours of the morning, because it seems like there's a lot.
Oh yeah, and they're about to in a couple of months they're going to release the kind of ground expansion where for the first time you'll actually be able to get out of your ship, go on foot. It's kind of like Star Citizen, but actually a real game.
Well, that's cool. I didn't even know they were doing that.
I was being facetious there, but no.
Oh.
Star Citizen, I don't know if you followed that development cycle and all the issues with it.
Nope, can't say I have.
Oh boy, well, someone will know. We'll get the joke. But yeah, you can actually play this, and it's theoretically it will be a real game. It's yet to be proven, but it looks really cool. The trailer looked really, really good. So
gotcha.
Elite Dangerous Odyssey, I believe, is the expansion. So it looks really cool. So FPS combat, going down to planets, landing on space stations, getting missions, exploration, a lot of interesting stuff. It's going to add a lot of depth to the game, which I'm looking forward to. Can't wait.
Yeah, man, I was a huge fan of Mass Effect, so that sounds like it's be right up my alley.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd love to play a game kind of like that. So I guess I picked a good time to get into it. So
yeah, start prepping. Get yourself comfortable. A couple months from now, we'll go getting some combat.
There we go, man. Sounds good. Has that been the only game that you've been able to put time into?
Pretty much. I mean, I did play a little Star Wars Squadrons before it.
That's right. Yeah.
Had a blast on that. It was good. It was just a little, the controls were amazing. The art was fantastic. It was just a little repetitive, maybe, in its multiplayer aspect. The single player was decent. Didn't complete it. Got about halfway through the single player, and then I was just like, "Give me Elite Dangerous." This is like it just made me want more. Basically, it did a fantastic job. It was awesome, but I was looking for a bit more immersion. So
gotcha.
Went on. But yeah, and prior to that, I had been playing Red Dead online with my dad.
Okay.
Getting our bounty hunter rank up and laughing at my dad as he crashes into rocks and stuff on his horse.
Is your dad a big gamer?
I'm working on it. I got him to build a gaming computer just, 2 years ago or so. Maybe It's been 3. But yes, I've been getting him in a lot of games, and I've been pushing him to the limit. He's been trying to play Elite Dangerous, almost losing his mind. Because, just imagine he's like, I believe he's 65, 66 at this point, and, not a long-time gamer. So Elite Dangerous is not the most intuitive game for someone, who doesn't have a decent history with, just understanding what a game expects of you especially in GUI. He never has understood GUI. Why is there stuff on the screen? Show me the game. I'm like, that's there to help you, Dad. Just look at that icon, follow it. What? But he's learning. He's learning. He's starting to dig it. He got his first, solo kill the other night, and I was just kind of watching him, and he's doing a lot better.
There you go, man. That's awesome. Well, as far as what I've been playing, then I'll talk about this real quick. I've been playing the Pathless on PS5, which is, I believe it was made by the same studio that made Journey. I know Micah, one of the writers for our website, will correct me if I'm wrong because he played through it. And it was pretty cool. It was a really cool adventure. You basically play as this archer who lands on this island, and you're trying to dispel this curse that is basically bringing darkness into this island. And so you're going around to these different things and cleansing the areas of the curses and things like that. I've noticed it seems like there's a little bit of, I got some like Shinto religion vibes in it with like the cleansings and the things like that. And so I don't know, I need to look into the game a little bit more. I don't know if that was an intentional thing or if that was like a reference thing they use. But yeah, the way that you traverse around the island is you basically have a stamina meter that you can use to run, but you can shoot at these little kind of like diamond things and they give you a speed boost. And so the traversal in the game was really fluid. It was just easy to play, easy to get into. And a lot of the boss fights were just really epic. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm going to go for the platinum, as a lot of people in our community have already done so, just because I'm not a huge fan of collectathons. I hate collecting things in games. I just have like really bad flashbacks to playing Super Mario late last year, of Super Mario 64 and Galaxy and all that. And I'm like, I just don't like collecting things. That's just not my thing. Of course I say that, and then I'll play things like Pokemon where the whole objective is collecting things. So maybe I'm just making excuses. Whoa. So that's the Pathless on PS5. I'm not sure what else it's on. If it's on other things, you guys will see it when you search for it online. The other game I want to talk about is this game that I have had a love-hate relationship with for quite a while now, and it's Dark Souls Remastered. I've been playing this game off and on since it released, or at least the remaster, I should say, not the OG one. And I'd always make a little bit of progress in each playthrough, and then feel like I hit a wall, get upset, stop. And so I've started and stopped this game probably 7, 8, maybe 10 times or so. But I would always make it further into the game with each new playthrough. And finally, last year, I sat down and was like, I need to finish this game. I need to knock it off my backlog, and so I can finally have it not be on there, but also be like, hey, I beat the original Dark Souls. And now here I am 40 hours later, and I'm like, I kind of don't want the game to end. Like, it's one of those things where like I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did, because Dark Souls is known to be really hard and kind of convoluted, especially when it comes to figuring out the lore and stuff. But man, now that I'm at the final boss fight, I've really enjoyed it. I will say that with this first one, there's a part where once you fight the famous Ornstein and Smaug, however you say it, makes me think of the dragon off The Hobbit. Once you fight those two, the game starts to fall apart after that, because you have to go to these specific areas, and each area has like a specific like trait or unique thing about it. Like one area is completely dark, and there's very little ground to maneuver around enemies. So you're having to try and wade and make your way through this cave, and it's dark, and hopefully you have gotten an item that emits light at that point. But if you didn't, you're trying to fumble your way through the darkness and fight these giant skeletons at the same time with little ground to maneuver. So it's a pain to navigate through. I didn't really enjoy it. And then you have other areas where you're in tight corridors, and there's just long range enemies at the end of the corridor, so you can't really dodge anywhere. It's just, it had little things like that just made it not fun anymore. And it just seemed like it was just more annoying than anything else. And the final two areas that I just went through where it just seemed, you can tell the game, they were probably being rushed at this point, because they just started copying, pasting a bunch of enemies in the areas instead of placing them methodically throughout the level. And so it was, and then some of the bosses just had some really cheap moves. Like there's one boss you go to fight. Those of you that play Dark Souls know the fight with Gravelord Nito. You drop into the arena and you already lose a chunk of your health. And then he does this homing attack that takes out even more of your health. So you start in the boss fight with like, for me, it was under half of my health. And I'm like, come on, really? And then he sends an army of skeletons after you. It was nuts. But got past those. I'm at the final boss as of this recording. That's where I'm at right now. So I'm about to fight Gwen and finish the game. And then I realized I didn't even do a whole DLC area. So now I'm like, do I go back and play that, or do I just finish the game so it's done and over with? But I've enjoyed it, man. But I can see why people start this game and don't finish it, because it really does test you. But I gotta say, it's been very rewarding getting to this point in the game. I'm like, man, looking at everything I've done and all the obstacles I've overcome, man, I just feel like a stronger gamer. Probably won't be able to do good in Call of Duty, but I can at least play Dark Souls. So that's all I really care about.
Nice.
But yeah, it's fun, very rewarding. I really enjoy it. I'm looking forward to jumping into Dark Souls 3 after this and seeing if anything I've learned carries over or sticks. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so let's switch gears and talk about what have we been reading. So Jeff, what is something that you have been reading lately?
Well, usually I am always reading the Wayne Grudem Systematic Theology book. At the end of my nights, kind of every night, I try to shut everything down about 2 hours before bedtime, and then I do a mixture of, reading that and hanging out, trying to calm down for the night. But yeah, so I'm always reading that. Currently just kind of starting the section on the dichotomy, trichotomy argument about the, body, soul, and spirit, and is it really a distinguishment between the three, or is it really, soul and spirit synonymous and interchangeably used? Obviously, I would hold to the dichotomy argument. But yeah, so I'm just starting to kind of go through that and check out his, argumentation for it and checking all that out.
Sounds good, man. We were talking about this a little bit in the pre-show. I remember when I was in seminary and we talked about that particular topic, and I think some people would probably be a little surprised to hear this, and maybe some people won't, but man, we spent I think a month or so in seminary talking about that topic, and it's I didn't think we would spend that long on it, but no,
it seems like a stretch. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, when you get into all the fine details of it and you really get into it, it's like, oh, okay, there's actually a pretty lengthy conversation to be had here. So
yeah, I mean, there definitely can be nuances, but yeah,
for sure.
People just like arguing too, to be fair. So
that's true. There is that, especially, I mean, I think if anyone's on Twitter, I think they're there for that. Maybe not everyone is there for that reason, but there's probably a good percentage of people that are there just for that reason. But
absolutely. I mean, I've learned that with my programmer, I literally have to just tell him the opposite thing that I want him to do because he loves to argue. So I'm just like, play WoW today, please, CJ. Just don't work. I do not want you to work today, and he'll fight me on it, and he'll do what I want him to do. It's interesting.
It's reverse psychology.
Pretty much, yeah. But he's on to me lately, but it does work. It still works.
That's funny. Awesome, man. Well, as far as what I've been reading, I have a very bad habit of starting multiple books at one time and then never being able to really finish any because I keep jumping around. I guess I have reading ADD, I think is what it would be called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have ADD, yeah.
It's hard, man. There's just so many good books out there, and I want to read them all. But I did start this book partially because I've been teaching my students, or walking through a series with my students, teaching on idols and avoiding them and kind of the pitfalls of them and how they come into our lives and things of that nature. So I started this book called where is the title? We Become What We Worship by G.K. Beale, and this was a book that was recommended to me by some friends, and I was also reading it for my own personal sanctification as well, just because when I was talking to a counselor late last year, they mentioned that, hey, there might be some idols in your life that you're not aware of, and I think that's causing some of the anxiety and stuff that you're dealing with. I was like, oh, interesting. Yeah,
no,
crazy, right?
What?
Who would have thought? Idols stress you out? No. That doesn't make sense. But no, yeah. So I started reading this as well to kind of help maybe give some new perspectives or help just kind of give me some insights, and especially some extra Bible verses to kind of go through and try to memorize as well. And I think what's good about this one here that I started, and I'm not too far into the book, so I can't speak as far as to the integrity or anything like that about the book, but he does a good job of reinforcing some of the, I guess what I would call the basics of Christianity, and that we're all created as worshipers. We're all going to inevitably worship something, and it's either going to be God or something else. And so there was this quote that he said that just kind of really stuck out. And this is kind of the thesis of his book, is what he says, or the main central theme that he's going to examine And he says, what you revere, you resemble either for ruin or for restoration. And I'm like, man, that's interesting. I've never really, I haven't heard it specifically quite like that way. And I was like, man, that's a really good saying. And I've tweeted that out. I mean, if any of you follow me on Twitter, you saw, well, 2 different quotes here that I'm looking at from GK Beale, and I'm sure there's going to be more. And so it was good. It got me thinking, man, like, especially when it comes to content creation and being, leading TRG and things like that. What's the point of, like, when it comes to me, like, doing different things, like, trying to grow to, let's just say 1,300 followers on Twitter, like, that's cool, but what am I really doing it for? Am I doing it just to have like a flex and to kind of draw some attention and give some authenticity or something like that to the show? Or is it just because, like, I want to reach more people and help more people, so it's good. It's getting me to examine some of the motives behind kind of what I do for the podcast, but also what I do in ministry as well. And then some of the things I do in my personal life in regards to gaming and TV shows and things like that. So it's getting me to think through these things that I honestly haven't really thought through in quite a while that I probably should have. So it's been good. It's been a good challenging for sure. But it's been a good challenging time at the same time. I think, was that a grammatically correct? It doesn't matter. Words are hard. So that's what I've been reading.
Don't ask me. My wife is a English teacher and all this, and she'll light me up. So. Oh,
dude, mine too.
I have no clue.
So, well, we're in a safe space here. We can mess up our words and our sentences.
Oh, I'm so relieved.
So let's go ahead and, because that's pretty much all I've been reading, let's switch over to the topic of the show. A quick reminder to you, the dear listener, to leave a rating and review of the show on your podcast app of choice or on the Podchaser link in your show notes. But let's transition into the topic here.
Traumatic event detected. Administering emergency stimulation protocol.
Like I mentioned earlier, you guys may have seen me react to the trailer for Eden Remains Arrival on YouTube, and you've probably been curious to know more about this game. And so I figured this would be a good time to bring Jeff on to really just kind of talk about the game and see what it's all about, and then give you, the dear listener, an opportunity to check the game out for yourself and consider supporting it and following it in the different avenues that Revelation Games has in place. So, Jeff, let's just kick it off here, man. Eden Remains Arrival, new game that you're working on. Mm-hmm. What is it about?
It is an FPS shooter.
Right on.
I'm just kidding. I just wanted to show you.
That's sweet and to the point. Easy.
No, it's a sci-fi first-person action survival game, and it's about a remote distress call that happens on a remote research facility on Eden. And the premise is you're an elite soldier and you're sent to answer the distress call, obviously. And things go terribly wrong. So it's a sci-fi kind of, in a sense, reimagining of certain aspects of the Book of Genesis. So it's illustrative. It's very much focused about the nature of man. What is a man? Obviously, there's a lot of correlation, illustration with the fall of Eden. Clearly, it's definitely sci-fi action game, and it's about this kind of recolonization attempt. Mankind's first homeworld was destroyed by an asteroid, and they've survived off remote moon base, and so here they are after 50 years. Finally, they have the technology to go back and kind of explore and see what happened, what went wrong, what remains of the planet, and it's just an interesting little sci-fi adventure that is very much theologically motivated. It's got a lot of interesting angles. So I really just wanted to tell like an origin story. Using a fictional sci-fi universe as a backdrop. So,
yeah, man, that's awesome. And I like just hearing you talk about it and kind of it having ties to Genesis and kind of relaying that story that we see there. It kind of gives me a lot of like Lord of the Rings, or kind of like what C.S. Lewis would do from time to time in some of his books, and trying to talk about biblical stories or biblical themes, but in a way that people don't normally expect. I think when people approach Christian media, they expect to be a very direct story about something in the Bible, but people tend to get creative with it and tell that same story, but maybe a little bit of a different way or in a different genre or something. So you're still getting that same story, but just in a different, I guess, genre or something that you probably wouldn't expect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a sci-fi parable. It's it's Chronicles of Narnia in space. That's a good pitch line. I'll use that. I'm sure the people will love
you
that.
Can put that on your marketing, like Chronicles of Narnia in space, TRG or something like that. That'd be awesome.
Sure, people will love it. Yeah, but it's interesting because every form of entertainment, right, is worldview propagation. It's based upon what we believe, how we interpret the world. And just the kind of Christian worldview is so suppressed in the entertainment industry, especially in video games. I mean, if can you count the amount of, maybe Christian developers who exist? Probably in one hand or two. I mean, it's just a very small niche that, we're trying to kind of get a foothold in to have a, opportunity to have our voice.
Yeah, and it's definitely one that's much needed. I mean, especially, I've been, I didn't even talk about this, but it's just one of the books I read for fun was here recently was about Super Mario and the history of Nintendo and things like that. And it kind of took me back to the NES days. And, when you think about Christian games, there's quite a bit on the NES that I can remember at the time going over to a friend's house, and they had Bible Adventures and a few others.
Yeah.
And really ever since then, you haven't really seen a whole lot of explicitly Christian games or even Christian influence games that hit the market and hit the consoles and things like that. You might see a few pop up on Steam, but you wouldn't really know about them unless, someone else told you about it or something like that. Cause they're just kind of, Steam just has a lot of games on there anyway. So it's hard to really find a lot of games.
Yeah.
But so let me ask this then. When it comes to this game specifically, Eden Remains a Rival, kind of where did the idea for this specific game and this specific story come from exactly? I mean, I know it has some ties to Genesis, but how'd you come up with it?
Yeah, I mean, it literally was that. I don't know how much I can go into this, but I was having conversations online, and in this particular context, it was about this is an odd place for inspiration for a game. It really is. But it happened with in some Christian group. I forgot which group it was, or I won't name it. It's not yours. You're fine.
I was like, man, it was TRG.
It was totally your heretics. No, but
never mind. I don't want to claim this.
It was interesting. It was a discussion about homosexuality and someone's struggle with someone in their family who was like that. And one of the replies it stood out to me as this kind of common thread that we see now and again. And he says, and he was so offended at some of the believers' responses. And he said, listen, I think your child, I think it was his child, is blessed by God with homosexuality and desire. And it just sparked this fundamental reminder that so many people, even people who would profess to know Christ, don't understand the nature of man and what the fall is. So many people just don't have a firm grasp on depravity and what what the Bible teaches about mankind and the world that we live in. And so it was actually sparked off an initial thing like that, where I was just reminded that people just don't understand. They don't understand the foundation of gospel truth. We all kind of start off thinking we're Aragorn and, Gimli and Legolas, and we're just, we're going to go, we just don't understand, we're actually the orc, and it's just, we have a wrong understanding about mankind and the nature. And so, it actually started from there. And then I just thought that it would be really, really neat to tell an origin story to teach theological truth, about the fall of mankind and what is a man and how did we get to be what we are. And I found that a really compelling basis for a video game to kind of, because it also simultaneously represented how we come to Christ in our life, right? We in our modern society in a very much sci-fi future compared to the ancient world. And we have to go back to this very ancient context to learn about truth that's therefore comes back relevant to us in our modern society. And so it was kind of paralleling some of that, having to go back to the past to find out what the point of the future is in the present. So,
That's very cool. I like that. And that's just, man, you talking about, people don't understand, biblical truths or even just the fundamentals of the gospel. Me being a youth pastor, you especially see it because me serving in the Bible Belt, so to speak, of America, a lot of students think that they're Christians, but then when you ask them just basic questions about Christianity, they kind of look at you like, oh, I never really thought of that before. And it's like,
Right.
So especially now in the age of the information age that we live in, I mean, a lot of people get their news and even their theology from places like TikTok or Twitter or the news or movies or whatever. So it's cool to hear that you are going into an area that is a pretty big mission field, so to speak, and bring a resource in there for people to come to a better understanding about what it means to be a man and go from learning about that and then going into salvation with Christ and then having that in the context of a video game. It's funny you mentioned that you said, delving into the question of what is a man, and I immediately thought of Castlevania, where Dracula is like a miserable pile of secrets, and I'm like, so
yeah, pretty much.
It's kind of funny though, because when you think about that quote, it's like, oh, you're kind of onto something there.
Not too far, yeah.
Which is weird. It's
just funny, yeah. I mean, because you're right. I mean, so many Christian youth are like, absolutely, believe in Jesus. I'm a Christian. Absolutely. Hey, are you good? Absolutely. Like, okay.
It's like, how do you feel about Romans 3? It's like, what's Romans? It's like, okay, let's crack open the Bible.
Yeah. Like, all I know is about Revelations, and you're like, there's no S on that.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I know we went back and forth on this podcast a couple episodes ago. Like, is it Psalm? Is it Psalms? Which one? Whatever.
Oh, man, yeah.
So, but that's a good time.
But yeah, 1 Corinthians.
Yes. 1 Corinthians. Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that in ages.
Oh man, 1 Corinthians. That's my favorite right there.
But like, I mean, even as a youth pastor, like I said, I'll ask students, okay, if you were to share the God, like if someone were to come up to you right now and ask you, like, why are you a Christian, or what is the gospel? How would you respond? They just kind of look at you like
blank.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, okay, so I got my work cut out for me. So, but that's cool to have this kind of thing in a video game. So you mentioned earlier when talking about the game, it's a first person shooter. It has survival elements. Can you explain and touch on some of the mechanics that are going to be present within this game, and maybe speak to some of the games that helped you or helped influence the decisions to put those mechanics in the game?
Sure. Well, kind of our basic, real simple one-liner pitch. Some people, and you can help me with my pitch right now. Like, some people are not going to get it because they haven't played it, and so I'll have a replacement word as needed. But the pitch is, it's like Star Wars Republic Commando meets The Long Dark with a splash of Alien Isolation. Now, depending on your age, you're either going to understand Star Wars Republic Commando and the awesomeness of it, or I'm going to have to say Halo meets The Long Dark with a splash of Alien Isolation, and then you should get it.
Yeah, man.
Does that make sense? Did you ever try Republic Commando?
See, that's the one I never played, but I watched my friends play it, and so I know it's got some strategy elements to it. It's got the shooter mechanics in there too, so I understand it because that was on the original Xbox, right? Xbox and PlayStation 2.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely inspired by some of that. I mean, the core mechanics, right, is we wanted to do a kind of hybrid light tactical shooter with survival elements, right? Because it fit the story that I wanted to tell, right? I wanted to tell the story of this origin planet, and you as the player coming to terms with what is reality, what is this place, and what is its relevance to me in my life. And so as you're going through that, it just made perfect sense to have some of this light survival mechanics while you're experiencing this cool tactical cover. So it's got some kind of cover shooter combat. You'll have a handful of tactical options, weapon customization, and you'll kind of be investigating this mystery. So you'll be able to like interact with data pads. Like, so something like Alien Isolation is you're kind of traveling around. There's this kind of barren facility, and you're going around finding out what happened, what went wrong, and trying to accomplish your mission goals. So it's definitely kind of a hybrid experience between good shooting moments on kind of a small open world and then using survival to kind of keep you alive, more Long Dark styled. So it's not a build your base kind of survival game. It's very much a harsh, difficult world. Everything's against you, and your gun can't save you from everything. You have to be resourceful. You have to also scavenge, find items, craft elements, and you can only craft at certain fabricator locations scattered around the world. So it makes it even a step more difficult. And there's sandstorms and all kinds of other stuff to kill you, and a host of creatures that are a ton of fun.
Yeah, I remember seeing a few in the trailer. I'm not going to lie. The way that you guys edited that trailer was really well done, because when you first see one of those first aliens, it kind of jumps at the screen a little bit. It scared me a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
Really?
I was like, okay, if this is going to be a horror game, I need to shift my brain a little bit and get ready for that. But
well, it definitely won't be horror, but we definitely want some of those creepy moments and some of those, very kind of fast paced. We wanted to give a mixture. You've got your moments of kind of maybe a little Doom-esque or Half-Life 2-esque kind of shooting, classic shooting stuff. And you also have, points of interest where you can pop in, jump into cover, customize your weapons, figure out how you want to play that game according to your kind of preferences. And you can choose, to use cover to pop up, a little bit like a first-person kind of Mass Effect type of a vibe, but it's not truly like it's not a third-person type shooter. It's FPS, so you can still do it. But, our design is, you'll have recharging shields, but non-recharging, regenerating health. So as you take damage, you'll actually have to heal yourself and go and craft things and find healing things. So it's kind of has a flow of taking combat a bit more serious, and you can die a little bit more quicker.
Yeah. And that kind of adds a little more urgency, or I guess a little more, I can't think of the right word because words are hard, but it adds more depth to the combat, because it's like, you're not just losing your shields, you're not just losing your health, you're losing your resources. And so you have to really kind of, I guess, gauge if you are going to engage in combat or not. Are you going to have options that allow people to avoid those kind of encounters, or is it going to be something where you really have to manage your resources wisely?
Yeah, it'll be about managing your resources and using tactics. So we definitely are trying to integrate kind of a little bit of like an Arma vibe in it. Very light, right? Keep in mind, we're trying to keep it simple, but that's why we're having this kind of intuitive cover-based system popped in there and allowing for other things like flanking and trying to figure out some suppression methods and stuff like that to allow players to kind of think a little bit and kind of plan their attack as they arrive on the point of interest. So you'd be able to like use a fabricator and change your rifle, put a scope on it or something like that if you wanted to do a more sniper type of role, or if you wanted to get like some kind of pumped up type of a shotgun and you think you want to trust in your reflexes a bit more and run and gun a little bit more. However, you'll still have to use some cover because you just can't take that much damage before your health starts going down. And obviously, as your health starts going down, if you don't have the resources to craft healing supplies, then you have other issues. So we just wanted to give that kind of a little bit more, while being light with it, a little bit more immersive experience as far as simulating this sci-fi experiences, like you're this space soldier and you're in this cool suit and you've got, heads up displays and vital displays and, giving that kind of cool experience of how you'd have to manage that while you're trying to survive this unknown scenario.
Yeah. So I'm not going to lie, that all sounds really interesting, and kind of hearing you talk about it more, it keeps making me think of Super Metroid and Metroid Prime, and how you're this lone person on this planet and you're just trying to survive, and you're encountering these different creatures and things like that. And I even noted this in the reaction thing when as the shield's charging up and the voice of the AI is talking to you, I'm getting some major Metroid Prime 3 vibes here, and I'm loving it. So with that being said, though, I mean, you're on this alien world and you're encountering a lot of threats. What are some of the threats that players can look forward and maybe be a little afraid of when they land on this planet?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's definitely a mixture between human, more tactical-based combat, which they can take you out pretty quick, and then there's a multitude of creatures native to the planet who have been. Well, I won't go into that, but yeah, there's a variety of different kinds of creatures, and there'll be different kinds of attacks. I kind of have to keep that a bit more abstract because I don't want to throw too much info out there. But yeah so you'll get a good balance of, kind of cover shooter popping in, being a little bit more mindful about what you're doing, not getting overwhelmed, and you'll have some fun. It's very, very much inspired, I think, in general from like Half-Life 2 and from that experience. So it definitely has kind of like a tip the hat to Half-Life 2 in the way that we're going to be kind of delivering the narrative throughout the gameplay experience. So it'll be kind of a light narrative, right? We're trying to make sure we keep our scope correct, but a light narrative experience woven through this blend of tactical combat, some cool shooter moments where you just get to, But again, the key to even the shooter moments is you got to prepare. So you'll have to go out, scavenge, find resources. You can't just craft anything at any time. It's about preparation. So you have to not only mine resources around the planet, but you also have to find components that they're both required to craft an actual item. So we wanted to make it a bit more realistic, that it wasn't just, it wasn't something like No Man's Sky where you can just do whatever, whenever, no big deal. No, it's much more severe, and you need to kind of calculate what you're going to do, remember where your fabricators are, traveling back and forth, making sure that you're prepared for combat while not being too grindy. So it's not going to be too grindy of an experience. It's just kind of balanced, So it's definitely more of an action game, but it's got a nice, another layer there, right, to really make the combat all that more satisfying, because now it has more meaning than something like a Halo where it's all not really consequential because you can just wait a second, you're all back to normal and all good. No, there's going to be more consequences here and more preparation that'll have to be made to succeed in this.
Gotcha. So you'll definitely be earning your wins, so to speak.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Sounds good to me. I mean, I've been earning my wins in Dark Souls, so that definitely appeals to me. And I'm like, yes, let's get it.
Yeah.
So let's kind of switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk more a little bit about the development side of things and kind of, I guess, the behind the scenes curtain of what it's like at Revelation Games. But longtime listeners know that we had you back on the show in 2017 on episode 91 specifically to talk about a game that you guys were working on at that time called Rise of the King. So as you were working on that project and as you translate it to this one, what are some things you learned working on that game that is helping to strengthen Eden Remains?
Yeah, I think a big part of it, one of the big flaws that I ended up having with that, again, that was my first project kind of crossing over to try to be a Christian developer, to try to, thinking about how can I make games to the glory of God and how can I, make a difference. And one of my biggest mistakes, that I learned on that project was, checking my ambition with reality and scope and, just learning a ton about, marketing and planning and, art costs, and just how expensive realistic art is, wow.
Yeah.
I learned a ton of stuff in all different spectrums. One of the big things I learned, from working on Rise of the King is, it doesn't matter if you're one person or two people. It doesn't matter if you have a couple $100 or whatever and some Unity assets. If you go realistic, you'll get judged by a AAA standard. And that was one thing we learned. And we thought about doing a hilarious reaction video because, our trailer went out and people would look at it and just some of the responses were hilarious. I don't take it too personal when people make fun of my stuff, because I know what I am. I'm just a guy trying to do it, small, very limited. But the comments were hilarious. Like, it looks okay, but The Witcher 3 is better. I'm like, yeah, dude, do you realize we're like two people and like they had like, I don't know how many millions and I had like a couple grand at most, and like, come on. Yeah. And just people don't understand that. So definitely from learning from that experience, right, that there was intentionality with the art direction changes into the stylized for the upcoming products that we were shifting to, both for scope and cost factor, right? But also a design aesthetic. I wanted to create, a unique looking style rather than just try to compete with things that are very difficult to compete with. Realistic art designs is very expensive. It's very complicated. So I just wanted to create something small, something fairly simple, but with a unique kind of art splash to it that doesn't look like everything else. So I definitely learned a lot about marketing, product identity, and also, just how our pitch was wrong. I didn't pitch the game properly. People just kind of thought it's just another survival game, and they didn't really understand what the essence of the game was, and that was my fault. I was brand new and trying to do 10 different jobs at once, and didn't take enough time with marketing and pitch and figuring out our product identity, and then trying to edit and make a trailer, and I wasn't great at that. Still not great at that, but I try. I'm getting a little better. But yeah, it was a humbling adventure where I learned a lot and have been applying it to the development process ever since.
Well, that's good, man. And like I mentioned earlier, the editing on that trailer I thought was really good. So you're definitely, I'd say you're an ace at it. I'm still trying to learn video editing myself with YouTube. So you might have to teach me a few things. Because like I said, when you cut to that creature jumping at the screen, man.
Oh, well, I'm glad you liked it, man. I was just, it's so challenging because you want to figure out how can I help people understand the narrative, right? But then you're dealing with an audience where people literally have less than 3 seconds of an attention span.
Yeah.
And so, like even with that trailer, right, I got a ton of great feedback and people were like, you waited too long to show gameplay and blah, blah, blah. Even with that. So I'm continually learning and applying and trying to make adjustments. But yeah, it is tough. People's attention spans are very short nowadays. And, I've got to continually improve. How do you tell story and then show people the gameplay right away that they want? And so, yeah, it's a humbling challenge.
For sure. Yeah. It's something that we're even learning as a church as we're trying to put more resources online for people and kind of have a more online presence. That 3-second attention span, dude, you are so right. We're trying to figure out how we can hook people and do all that. And I'm even reading a book now called Hook Point, trying to figure out, how do we stand out in a 3-second world sort of thing. And man, it's hard, but like I said, I think at least from me, and again, I could just be really giddy and I might be alone in this, but I thought that trailer was really good. It definitely caught my attention. And, I love the look of the game too. I thought you guys have nailed a really good look on the game to where it's simple, but it's unique and it stands out all at the same time. And so
thank you.
It's pretty cool. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's it's technically flat shaded or polygonal, but we kind of did a little bit more of a stylized approach. So there's other things in the art style you don't typically see, like there's normal maps on the terrain, so it gets more lighting interaction. And we put a lot of effort into. It's definitely not like typically you see polygon stuff and it's kind of blocky and cute.
Right.
And so we kind of did polygon, but with a much more artistic-y, serious edge to it. So it would be a little strange. People are like, huh? It's not, it's not a game made for kids necessarily. It's just a stylized art style. So yeah, so we took a lot of effort in trying to make something worth, people's time. So
yeah,
glad that you noticed, man.
Yeah, man. Glad I could bring that up and encourage you a little bit. Now, you mentioned something just now that brought another question in my head about, technically not being a game for kids, so to speak. Is there a particular rating that you guys are aiming for, like E or T or anything like that?
We're aiming for mature. A lot of sex scenes.
Whoa, okay.
Okay, no, I'm kidding.
I'm like, M-rated, yes. I love M-rated games.
Totally kidding. No, I don't even know at this point. I mean, I'm assuming it would pass something like a teen type rating. I'm assuming. So, I mean, definitely a lot of. There's definitely violence. Clearly, there's darkness, there's suspense. Nothing too over the top.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool. Well, let me ask this question here. Because Revelation Games is a explicitly unashamed Christian studio, and I mean, game development studios, I can't really speak a whole lot to it because I'm not super familiar with the field and kind of what a studio does on the back end and on the day-to-day stuff. But I know they encounter a variety of trials and their own things to deal with and certain sets of challenges, and even just, dealing with all the stuff that you hear and read online, like you mentioned with Rise of a King's trailer. What are some unique challenges that you faced as a Christian studio?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges is finding an audience, obviously, believe it or not. So I've made the distinction in my particular brand. There's different philosophies kind of out there of, is there such a thing as a Christian game or is there not? And what is a Christian game? And so from my perspective, after kind of thinking about it over the years, I went with the distinction of we're a Christian company and we make games. I wouldn't say the games I'm making are Christian games. Obviously, they're influenced from my worldview. And with a specific purpose to glorify God. But it's me as a Christian, right, propagating worldview through products that I'm making for people. So I definitely think that that's one of the problems that a lot of developers struggle with in this is they're trying to make Christian games, and you've already got a very limited audience when you put yourself in that box.
Yeah.
But then also beyond that, right, the second layer of difficulty beyond that is, in my experience, most Christians don't even want to play Christian games. They're like, they just don't care. Who asked for that? It's like I've encountered that a lot. I don't know what your kind of perception of that is, but yeah, a lot of people are that I see, and not everyone by any means, but a good portion of the average kind of gamers, Christian gamers, are quite just content with the world's stories and the world's games, and they don't really understand, why do we need this? Why is this? In other words, they don't see it as something worthy of like investing in or having, helping or trying to see things propagated and built and networks. And I don't know if you've kept up with kind of Marcus from like the he was from he was with Apologia Church, and he was going on with this lore thing. Yeah, he's going on kind of with this lore thing, and I've had a couple little small email exchanges with him. But yeah, so I've just kind of faced that a lot of believers don't recognize the importance that Christians need to be creating. All entertainment, no entertainment is neutral. It all has a worldview. It all has a purpose, and so that's one of the big struggles that I've had, is just finding Christians who are at that level where they realize that. And then there's nothing wrong with playing, a lot of secular games, right? I won't say all, but a lot of secular games, they're fine. But it's, if you're just content with that, then that, it definitely, I will say it at least disappoints me, because, God should be glorified through entertainment, and currently he's not. In entire fields like gaming for the most part. And so anyways, what is your perspective on that? Like, you're a Christian gamer, and what have you kind of experienced with that angle of the Christian audience?
Yeah, I think for me, it's some of the stuff that you were bringing up there about how nothing is neutral on a worldview. Everything has a worldview. That's part of the reason why we started this podcast, was to engage with these games. And I'm forgetting exactly where this verse is, but there's this verse that talks about taking every thought captive for Christ. And if we're going to do that with gaming, and we want to enjoy these games to the glory of God, what does that look like? Because it's got to be more than just, bro, I got like a 35 KD spread on Call of Duty or something and called in the new. It's like there's got to be more to it than that. And especially as you see, there's this push of cranking out story-driven games. It's ripe for analysis, and I know people probably don't like that because it thinks you're going really deep and thinking deeply about the games, but I think we as Christians, that's something that we should be doing, and that's part of our goal here on the podcast, is to ask really good questions and take certain themes of games and compare them to scripture. And, are there things that align with the worldview that we can clearly see that they're pulling from? Or is there something that we see in a game that is very different than what the Bible teaches? And what can we learn from that? Or, how can we redeem that time that we have? It's just like one that I think of, I think one of our more popular episodes that we've done has been the reboot of God of War, and talking about the topic of, masculinity and fatherhood, because at the time that game came out, several media sites were railing against it because they're like, oh, it pushes forward toxic masculinity. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about what masculinity actually is in regards to the Bible. And then do we see examples of that in the game? And is it really as bad as what people are saying? And of course, the answer is no. Kratos is trying to come to terms with what it means to be a dad. What are some things that we can learn? What are some ways that we identify with that? And so, there's that aspect of it, and that's what we do. But man, it's especially as I kind of branch out and go to different communities and things like that, where there's gamers and stuff, you see that people want to know what the Bible says. And if we can help people connect their hobby to their faith and vice versa, so that they're seeing games through the biblical lens, then I would consider our job accomplished as a podcast. But yeah, I will agree with you on how, in regards to Christians just not really wanting Christian video games, because we've asked this question before on Twitter, and we have an active community over there, and we love those guys, and we have an active Facebook group. Anytime we bring up the question of, should there be Christian video games or something like a game based off, like I've always been, ever since I read the story about Ehud in Judges, I'm like, I want an Assassin's Creed style game where you play as Ehud. It would only be one mission, but I would still want it, But we bring those questions up, and you're right, man. A lot of the responses are, we don't need it. And we're
good. Yeah. We're all good here.
I was just going to add, I've gotten to the point, especially since, COVID happened last year, I really hate that response, because for the longest time, it seemed like churches kind of pushed against the idea of putting stuff online, maybe not starting like an online church, so to speak, but just putting resources out there, creating, online communities, because the internet is the town square now. That's where people go. That's where people are. And if we're going to reach people, we need to go there. Right. And I think last year with COVID, that really woke a lot of churches and Christians up to that reality. And the thing that kind of worries me is, what is it going to take for Christians to get it for this? Mm-hmm. If we want to reach gamers, so to speak, mm-hmm. then we need to go into those areas and meet with people, talk with people, meet them where they're at, but also start building some influence in there. And you do that by kind of like what we've been doing for the last 6 years, making this podcast, being on social media, interacting with people who aren't explicitly Christian, and just letting them know, like, hey, we just want to hang out. We like video games. You like video games. Let's talk about Mega Man or something. And then that leads into conversations later on. And that lets people know, you know what, maybe Christians aren't as bad as what I thought they were. I'm going to bring some more friends into this community. And then they hear the gospel through that. And I mean, even just like what you're doing with your game, like I said, there hasn't really been any kind of Christian influence or Christian worldview based games. And here you have an opportunity for it. And through that, I mean, dear listeners, I want you to understand this when we're talking about this. This could be a potential huge thing for kingdom impact. And we got to get, in my opinion, we got to get behind that. Is just my opinion.
Yeah, it's tough because, we can often be quite divided, whereas the secular world is quite united in a lot of ways. And, he who controls entertainment controls the majority of people, because one thing that, and I'll only say a very brief thing on the political spectrum, but one thing that the last election and the kind of current climate of politics in our society has taught us is that there's two types of people. There's people influenced by the culture, and there's people influenced by the word. And you're seeing a lot of Christians kind of becoming revealed professing Christians who are showing you just how powerful even secular influence of entertainment is. It has changed so many people's minds to false realities, to embrace things that just aren't true, just because it's popular, it's prevalent, it's the voice out there. They're controlling a narrative. They're repeating it and saying it, and it just reminds you the importance of the influence over culture. It's the secular world knows it very well, and so often so it becomes a problem when we don't realize the importance to share the truth and to get, a voice out there to combat, any narratives from the mainstream. So
for sure. Yeah. And I mean, it even goes to how, we read in scripture, how we've all been given, gifts and talents from God. And we can think of the spiritual gifts, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. I'm sure people are singing that in their head right now. Right. So you guys are welcome for that getting stuck in your head. But, you think of even just how God has gifted us with, like me and you, we have very creative personalities. We like to create things. We like to, engage in that way and do things. And I think when it comes to Christian engagement or even mission opportunities or evangelism or even just being creative, God gives us these talents and ideas to create these things. And what are we doing hiding them and not doing anything with them? Let's flex these muscles a little bit and get to cracking, and I think we can see some pretty cool things come up from it.
Yeah. And, hopefully, right, with each year we're, Christians are learning more and more just the influence that, entertainment does have over people's worldview and their politics and everything. And just, and we just need to let people know that, God's stories are better and we should be glorifying God and get that out there. Because, the other side is in a lot of ways, winning in that front, at least. So, yeah,
absolutely. And in a way too, like a lot of those things are even pulling from the Bible without even.
Exactly. I mean, they're yeah.
It was funny. I was reading a book last year called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and literally all these like habit changers or things like that were in there. I'm like, okay, literally what he just suggested is in this part of the Bible. This other thing over here was something Jesus said. So I know he's not pulling from the Bible, but I'm like, it all comes from somewhere. Like there's an original point of birth, and those ideas are in the Bible. And so, but
it's amazing. Yeah.
So, man, I'm glad we got you on here. I'm glad we were able to talk even about Christian engagement in the realm of entertainment, because I think that's the next great frontier for a lot of Christians. And there's some things we got to learn first. I think there's some right ways of doing it, wrong ways, but I think something's happening, man. Especially as I look on Twitch, there's more and more Christian streamers popping up left and right, and I'm like, okay, something's happening here. God's doing something, and so I'm praying we see this in the entertainment space, as well. But with that being said, man, I know some of our dear listeners, they listen to this conversation, they listen to you, and they check out the trailer and things like that. They definitely want to follow the progress of this game and maybe even support the development if possible. So what are some ways that our community can keep up with the game and follow you, and also possibly support the game if they feel led to?
Yeah, I mean, it's real easy. You can just go to EdenRemains.com, and there we have like our mailing list sign up, or you can like us on social media, which is all linked there. And yeah, we would just appreciate any kind of support, checking us out, giving us a shot. I mean, and we totally realize, right? Like we're trying to continue to improve, right, as developers, as creatives, because obviously, right, one of the problems why people don't like a lot of Christian entertainment, or the idea of it, is because it's been so poorly done.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is a resource issue. And the other part is just people not realizing that it's something needing to be invested in. And so, we're all working on that. We're all trying to grow and get better with each thing. But yeah, so you can just go to EdenRemains.com, and that would be awesome. And you can just follow us, and we are definitely in the near-ish future, maybe looking towards a crowdfunding type of venture.
Okay.
And so that's not set in stone yet, but we're kind of working our way in that direction, which is, that's the other problem we face as Christian developers, right? It's a lack of money, lack of Christian investor publisher type options. From time to time I do get options, or little, emails, invitations from secular type organizations, but that's not going to gel with our kind of mission statement. But
right.
Yeah, so there's just a lack of that as well. So yeah, we would appreciate the support.
Sounds good. Well, dear listeners, like I said, the links to all that stuff that we've talked about will be in your show notes. So check that out. It will be posted on social media, those different outlets as well. And man, I didn't even ask this. I just now thought of this. What kind of platforms are you guys aiming to release the game on?
Well, the easiest, right, which is the free platform, which is PC. So that's our primary, and we'll definitely consider, expanding that down the line. It's very easy for us to potentially do like a Mac or a Linux type thing with the, we work in Unity, so the way that's set up is quite easy. The challenge with the consoles is there's tons of like entry costs, and if you're an indie developer, unless you've got a fair chunk of change and some additional help, there's a whole process to get your title on a console. It's very I've worked on a project that had to do that, and it's a lot of extra expense and work, QA. So we would love to do it down the line. It's definitely something possible, but focused on PC right now.
Yeah, I didn't even know. Because again, we're pretty ignorant in terms of like what it takes to make a game and all that stuff on the show. Adam and I joke about how, isn't it easy to just remaster a game? You just put it in the machine and do a little beep, beep, boop, bop, and then it just comes out at remastered. It shouldn't be hard. But like, I didn't know that like how many different things you have to do to get a game on a console until I listened to Colin Moriarty's podcast, because now he's tied in with Lily Mo Games, and he was talking about all the QA and testing and the the updates and all the stuff that you have to go through. I'm like, man, that's I didn't know. That's
crazy. Yeah, like literally, when I mixed the audio for Fury, you literally had to keep it within a certain decibel range to pass that particular test. It's crazy that was for Sony. So you literally have to keep your audio within a certain max threshold within X amount of seconds, and it's a whole it's a crazy, crazy set of standards that you need extra money and time and resources to be able to hit. So yeah, we're keeping it simple. Let's make a cool, small, single player PC game. Let's make something cool, and then we'll see how we could expand that.
Sounds good. Well, I am even more glad I built a PC last year, because now I can, if you guys release any tests or anything, I know I'm proud of myself too. I was like, look at it. I did it. So
I've been telling you forever, man.
Dude, there's been a lot of people in the community telling me to build a PC for a long time. I remember it was funny. I remember I was going through like our YouTube videos late last year, just kind of going through there, and I saw a video on there titled "I built a PC," and I'm like, I just built a PC this year. What is this? And I clicked on it, and it was me playing PC Building Simulator. I'm like, dude, past Logan was a jerk. Like, why did I do that to the community? Oh man, but yeah, no, I'm glad I built one, and it's been awesome. It's definitely changed a lot of things for me, and even the show as well that dear listeners are getting to benefit from. So it's good times.
Awesome, man.
It's good times.
We welcome you.
Well, I feel welcomed. It's nice being on this PCMR yacht and just kind of with the hair flowing and everything, hanging out with y'all. It's great. It's great stuff. But Jeff, man, thank you for coming on the show, man. I greatly appreciate you coming on, taking some time out of your day and out of your work schedule to just talk about this game with dear listeners and share it with them, and even just kind of go over some of the behind the scenes stuff with game development, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Love
yeah,
your work.
Man. Now, before I let you go, we're going to do some recos, but this is the second episode of the month, and this is where we do our patron thank yous.
You love me. You really love me.
So these are the lovely folks that support us over on patreon.com. As always, you can support us as low as $1 a month. You heard the spiel at the top of the show. If you feel led to support the show, you can do so there. But the folks that have been supporting the show for the month of January have been Alex Castellanos, Andre Swan, Ashley Cronenbitter, Christopher Commander, Colin Gregory, Daryl Tavares, David B., David Henderson, Derek Smith, Isaac Stoltz, Jake Walker, James Barker, Jeffrey Jackson, Jimmy Chonga. Man, if I mispronounce your last name, I apologize. Please correct me. Words are hard. Joanne Monroe, Josh Broccolo, Caleb Kokorodaki, Mark Fromy, Matt Edwards, one of my favorite ones, Matthew White Chocolate McDougal, Matt Millsap, Melvin Benson V, Micah Hendrick, Michael Toller, Nate McKeever, Pastor Shea, who's one of our new ones, Retro Rewind Podcast, Sam White, Samuel Kalunga, Third Strongest Mole. Maybe Third Strongest Mole is one of my favorites. Weatherman Keith, Wesley Ray, Xavier Medina. I don't know what happened to the first and second Strongest Mole, but clearly they no longer exist because the third one is the one that's here.
Oh man.
Good times. Good times. I'm glad the dear listeners haven't like changed their names, because they know we're going to read these things to something like, I don't know, words are hard or something real mean. I don't know. I hear a lot of people do that on their podcasts. Besides the point, some recos.
Well, now they will.
Yeah, now they will. Great. I shouldn't have said anything.
Watch
Anyway,
out for that.
Jeff, let's quickly segue away from this so people aren't thinking about what to change their names to. What recos? There we go. What are some things? What are some things that dear listeners should check out? Obviously, your game Eden Remains Arrival, but is there anything else that you want them to check out?
If you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up.
You should check out Elite Dangerous, and if you're on PC, you should come play. We should do some kind of get together and hang out in space and go take out some bad guys. And yeah, I mean, I've been on that kind of sci-fi kick. I would definitely also recommend Star Wars Squadrons. That's a fantastic game. And just for kind of classic sake, because I know a lot of people have missed it, I would recommend The Long Dark if you've never played The Long Dark. What's wrong with you? And you should play it. It's fantastic. It's one of the best survival games. It's so well done. It's definitely a little bit more simulator than action game for sure, but it's amazing.
Yeah, I actually just downloaded that off Epic Games because I got it for free several months ago. So I will definitely be trying that. I'm going to get my life together, man. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to get it together.
Yeah, get in there, and you got to do sandbox mode. Okay, the best part is just go into sandbox mode. They added a story mode later. It's not as good. Sandbox, just go in there and have fun suffering.
Awesome. I love it. I'm used to suffering from playing Dark Souls, so I'm sure I'll feel right at home.
Yeah, right at home.
But yeah, especially dear listeners, if you hop on the Discord, there's a whole section of our community that's playing Elite Dangerous. So definitely hop in there. They'll help you out. They'll give you some good tips like they did with me when I was jumping in, and even tag Jeff, be like, hey, what am I doing? And then go from there. My only reco, of course, is, check out Eden Remains Arrival. Links to all that stuff will be in your show notes, just to reiterate that. I do also have a video for you to check out, especially if you are a Dark Souls fan. One night when I was feeling particularly angry and frustrated with the game, some friends shared this video with me called Happy Souls, which is just a goofy, lighthearted take on the series where they're just kind of making fun of the tropes and some of the OP weapons and just some of the goofier side of the thing. So it's definitely, if you didn't want to play the game, definitely check this out. And I think you'll enjoy it. It's a good time. It's pretty funny, especially when you get to the part about boss weapons. But I'll save that for when you watch it. But anyway, dear listeners, thank you again for listening to this episode of The Reformed Gamers. If you would like to support us, like we said at the top of the show, you can support us on Patreon. You can go over to the merch store and get yourself some sweet, sweet swag, like a sweet Dear Listener hat, shirt, hoodie, all the sorts of fun stuff, and you can customize that to your liking. And as always, interact with us on Twitter at twitter.com/TRG podcast. Go over to the website, thereformedgamers.com. Like us on Facebook, join the Facebook group, all sorts of fun stuff. Follow us on Instagram. Links to everything will be in your show notes. But dear listeners, thank you again for listening. And until next time, be a deer, keep it locked here. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Reformed Gamers, the podcast all about theology and gaming. TRG is edited by Dear Ear Productions, so thank them for the buttery smooth tones in your ear. If you're looking for extra content, head on over to youtube.com/thereformedgamers. The Reformed Gamers is entirely fan-supported over on patreon.com/reformedgamers by our dear patrons. The following deer are at the producer level or higher and will forever be thanked at the end of each show, as long as their pledge comes through, or we forget to update the audio. Those people are Pastor Shay and Wesley Ray. Thank you for your support on patreon.com, keeping our controllers charged, and supporting Logan in his never-ending quest to collect them all. Platinum trophies, that is. So be a deer and keep it locked here. Keep listening. We'll catch you later.